Okay, let me hit the OK button here. Okay. So, folks, I'm here at my desk in Seattle in my apartment. I'm going to read off a few remarks from my iPad, and I've got a little tickle, so I'm going to have the water. And I want to thank Steve again. Steve is a huge part of Seattle Soto Zen, um, and it would be a totally different entity without Steve. So I'm just honored to practice with him and to be in another group that he likes, Selwood. So yes, let me let me say that I've been reading uh, "Going Home" by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I'm going to start with a passage from my reading, one that really strikes me, especially about walking meditation. He says, "You cannot see the Dharma unless you see a person practicing the Dharma." So the quote goes like this: What is the Dharma? The Dharma is not a set of laws and practices, or a stack of sutras, or videotapes, or cassettes. The Dharma is understanding. It is the practice of loving kindness as expressed by life. You cannot see the Dharma unless you see a person practicing the Dharma, making the Dharma apparent to everyone, like a nun walking mindfully, touching the earth deeply, and radiating peace and joy. This nun is not preaching or showing a videotape, but she is expressing the living Dharma. She can express the living Dharma because she is a person. In our physical body, we can touch the Dharma body. So the Buddha has a Dharma body, and his Dharma body will continue to be seen and touched by us as long as there are people who continue to practice the Dharma. All of this is possible only with non-self, with impermanence. So um, I began my Zen practice in earnest in 1992. I was living in Seattle, and I answered an inner call to deepen my meditation experience. And by chance, the reader board that I sought out gave me an event, and I went to it, and it was Zen, Introduction to Zen Meditation, by the group that's now called Dabaizan Chobo Zenji, or Chobo Ji, a Rinzai group. And there I met Genki Takabayashi. Genki Takabayashi was born and trained in Japan and came to America to assist leading sessions and was invited to stay and eventually became a resident and is with Seattle Soto Zen for many years. He passed away in uh, 2011. We always called him Genki Roshi, but I don't know if he was actually uh, uh, given that title, but we called him Genki Roshi. So 1992, I attended my first Zen retreat at Rohatsu, first week of December, and we used the uh, Methodist church camp, which we still use with Seattle Soto Zen, Camp Indianola. Indianola is a small town across Puget Sound from downtown Seattle. And we practice Kinhin, we practice Zazen in a big lodge that, with our Zabatons arranged around the perimeter of the room. And up front, to complete the square, was Genki Roshi. And Genjo Marinello, his uh, number one student, who's now Genjo Roshi himself, and the timekeeper, and we sat together in front of the fireplace, completing the rectangle zabutons. Above the hearth there was a huge cross that was embedded into the stonework. But our Zazen extended from early morning to late at night, as one that practices at a Rohatsu. But once a day, I remember after lunch or after the break after lunch, the group would form for outdoors meditation, Kinhin, and strike out for a spirited walk to the beach in front of the lodge, our meditation hall. And we would walk briskly and steadily in line, single file to the beach, and then switch into slow walking for a few moments, still in single file, and then resume the faster walking to return to the lodge for afternoon sitting. And the air in December was fresh, and if it were clear, we could see the Cascade Mountains snowy to the east and the shimmering buildings of downtown Seattle across the Sound. I followed the person in front of me, and maybe there were 40 of us in line. And until that day, I had most of my practice instruction given to me from Genjo Marinello, Genki's student, how to hold my hands in shasu, how to coordinate my breathing with the slow placement of my steps. Genki Roshi rarely ever spoke to teach. He had a very uh, limited grasp of English, but he spoke well. And his posture and his practice and his form just taught me, just from observing him, watching him. So one afternoon, the Kinhin along the beach. Oh, and for our Kinhin, Genki did not go out in the single file, but he stayed up on the deck because there were a few people who required a gentler experience because of their physical limitations. So he was doing Kinhin up on the deck, and we were looking down at this serpentine of people on the beach. And after the first of these afternoon walks, Genki Roshi spoke to us about form. He had noticed that a few people, newcomers, at the end of this line, when down at the beach, had picked up some driftwood branches and were whacking at some beach grass as they walked along doing Kinhin. And as the line returned, Genki suddenly shouted, "Kinhin is Zazen!" Whoa. Everybody stopped in his tracks, and his words being directly, especially to those who'd broken the form, the beach grass, beach whippers, but to us all, and especially to me. I still remember this teaching from over 30 years ago. Kinhin is Zazen. Zazen is Kinhin. Standing is Zazen. Lying down is Zazen. Taking the elevator, as I did yesterday, from the Seattle street level down to the light rail departure platform, 3 levels below ground, is Kinhin. Riding the train in Zazen, where's my mind? Where's my body as we all flow on together from Capitol Hill to Beacon Hill? Where's my Zazen now? So now I bring it up to the present, just a couple of weeks ago. And are we all practicing the Dharma? Are we all embodying the Dharma as we travel? I used to work for an airport shuttle company called Shuttle Express. I often ask myself, How's your door-to-door friendly service going today? So from 1992 to October 5th, a couple weeks ago, I still reside in Seattle, and these days, as Steve said, I assist Seattle Soto Zen spiritual teacher Kinhin Allison Tate. And this Sunday, we were sponsoring first Sunday of the month introduction to Zen before we begin our morning practice. And 9 people had signed up, people that I'd never met before, and who were being instructed by our board president, Nathan Tokusho Britton. And he conducted the teaching from 8:30 to 8:50. And this group sat together in 3 parallel rows. And after the class, as the hon was struck, everyone settled in together for our first period of Zazen. 30 of us were in attendance, more people than we had ever had together before in our Zen training hall, this dojo of Seattle Aikikai Aikido, from which we rent for our Sunday morning programs. So we did Zazen together with 9 new people from 9 a.m. to 9:25. The room was quiet and solemn with the sounds outside of cars passing and people chatting as they walked down the street going to coffee. We live real close to a coffee shop. We were 30 people, some with formal Zen experience, which had continued for years and years, and some for whom this was their first formal seated meditation. And then I remembered this quote: "You cannot see the Dharma unless you see a person practicing the Dharma." 2 strikes of the bell signaled the conclusion of the first period of Zazen. Next came a series of directions to us all, but especially directed at the new group. As we prepare for Kinhin, walking meditation, let's stand up and face the center of the room, standing in front of your zabuton. And maybe I've said that 50 times since we've been in this building. And again, Takusha was called upon to demonstrate Kinhin this time. Hands in shasu, the placement of each foot on the out breath, lifting the next foot on the in breath, equal separation between people if possible. With Kinhin, we remain in Zazen and yet bring the body into simple, subtle activity. Though we're not sitting on a cushion, we are following our breathing and watching our thoughts. Preparation for mindfulness in activity, the activity of being a human being, activity of then going to wash the dishes or vacuum the zendo after we're finished, or walk down the sidewalk to have coffee, drive home afterwards. But before we formed the one big circle for our walking on that Sunday, the instruction was offered for us to turn back to our sitting places. Before embarking on our journey of Kinhin, we first turned around and restored our Zazen temples to their original order, our zabutons and zafus. Please fluff up the zafus. Wipe away the wrinkles in the fabric of the zabutons. Take out your footprints. Replace any chant books. Make it look as if you'd never been there. So when people walked by, they could see order emanating from corner to corner. And when they returned from the ceremonial walk, each person's Zazen home was ready for the next period. And we asked the new visitors who had been sitting in 3 rows to let the back row file out first, so as at the end of the walk they could return down their row more easily. Here again was the logic of order and harmony being suggested. And soon a circle had been formed which spread from end to end of the training hall and filed by the altar with the Buddha statue, flowers, and incense potpourri cups that we use. And I was stunned by what the group had accomplished even before the walking began. 30 people had formed a circle. And with the Tenkin's clap, clap of the clappers, this circle began its clockwise circumambulation. We covered only a few feet in the allotted 10 minutes of walking, but these moments had been experienced in harmony. Again, you cannot see the Dharma unless you see a person practicing the Dharma. We could see the Dharma and feel the emptiness of form. Strangers until that morning, leaving behind our world of strident angst, of pushing and shoving, of bombast and separation, had come together to sit quietly together, to join together in the harmony of forming a circle and walking, a miracle of rare device. And weren't we also enacting the walking that Buddha did around the Bodhi tree? We were in link with the Buddha's peace. Here on Capitol Hill, Seattle, Washington, 30 people were gathered to learn and to experience and to walk in the activity of enlightenment. Yes, Zazen is Kinhin. And Kinhin is Zazen in activity. And the practice of Kinhin can be performed every day. As we all here know, I'm sure. Not just in the Zendo or in a special corner of our living room. Kinhin is the practice of walking down the hall, the awareness of getting on the bus and walking to a seat, the focus on that tired return home, back to the door of the apartment or the house, placing the foot, following the breath, watching the thoughts. Kinhin is Zazen. So, those are my two stories I wanted to bring to you and emphasize how important this practice is to me. And then I thought, well, I would really love to read a poem that has nothing to do specifically with what I've just talked about, but it inspires me continually. And it's a poem about feet and walking. So let me conclude with sharing this to you. It's from William Blake, passage from his prophetic poem, Jerusalem. And did those feet in ancient time walk on England's mountains green? And was the Holy Lamb of God on England's pleasant pastures seen? And did the countenance divine shine forth upon our clouded hills? And was Jerusalem builded there among those dark satanic mills? Bring me my bow, burning gold. Bring me my arrows of desire. Bring me my spear, O clouds unfold. Bring me my chariot of fire. I will not cease from mental fight, nor shall my sword sleep in my hand, till we have built Jerusalem in England's green and pleasant land, in Seattle's green and pleasant land. Thank you.